With grocery prices rising all over the world, I thought it would be a good time to do another budget challenge. You guys loved my last one, but I used Malaysian prices last time, and this time I decided to hop on my Kroger app and use Kroger prices. So I spent only $55 to feed my family of 4 for an entire week, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I want to share with you guys what I came up with, what I meal prepped, and what we ate. So first I'm going to show you my grocery haul, and then I will show you a few items that I meal prepped to set us up for a successful week, and then I will share with you guys all the meals we ate throughout the week. I'm assuming that all you guys have is a fat salt and pepper on hand, and I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and can replicate this really inexpensive week of eating on a budget. All right, here's an overview of everything I bought for, in the US, about $55. So I'm hoping this will feed my family for a week. We shall see, but let's start over here with the produce. All the prices that you are gonna see on the screen are from Kroger in the States, and obviously I don't have the same brands or even the same amounts specifically, but I will weigh things and try to make sure that I use the same amount as was sold at Kroger. So at Kroger, there was a pound of baby carrots for a good price, so I got about a pound of whole carrots. I got 3 Granny Smith apples, 2 ripe bananas, 2 bell peppers, a cabbage, some mushrooms for some mushroom ramen. Limes and lemons add a ton of flavor, and are really cheap. So highly recommend having those in your pantry or fridge all the time. Edamame is super cheap and a great protein source, as well as tofu. Tofu is a lot more expensive in the States. Yeah, definitely using the Kroger price and not the price of tofu here in Malaysia, which is about 50 cents a block. That's kind of the produce. We also got some vegetable broth. I would have probably bought the carton, but I have 4 cups worth here. A head of garlic, 2 onions for some chili. We've got chopped tomatoes, tomato sauce, some canned corn. Some of this stuff I didn't buy because I already had a ton, but I will put the price of what it was at Kroger just to make sure that I'm staying in my budget. But I already had baking powder, I already had peanut butter. Bought some vegan mayo, which is definitely a splurge when you're on a budget, but it had so much flavor, it just satisfies you because it's in fat. We're gonna make some coleslaw with this and some chickpea salad. I got a spice mix. That's just kind of the cheaper way to go if you are on a budget versus buying like 5 different spices. You could always do this, but definitely recommend slowly building up your spice cabinet so that you can make a ton of meals, really flavorful. I got some ramen noodles. I will not be using the seasoning, just the noodles. These are incredibly cheap. Normally I'd buy like pasta or whole wheat pasta, but sometimes ramen is great, and it's great when you're on a budget. I got 2 cartons of coconut cream. The cans of coconut milk here are insanely expensive, and I already had these, so I'll just pretend these are 1 can of full-fat coconut milk each. Got some applesauce. We're gonna make applesauce pancakes with flour. We're also gonna use flour and applesauce and a fat that I already have on hand. So I'm assuming with this challenge, you already have a fat, salt, and pepper on hand. So also gonna use these 2 things to make tortillas. Soy sauce, I would have gotten a smaller jar. Oh my goodness, it's leaking, look at that. If I was buying from Kroger, but I already had some, so I'm just gonna use a couple tablespoons this week. And I got a thing of black beans, some soy milk. So I believe I told you everything I got. And now let's do some meal prep. We got to soak beans and cook them and see how well we do this week on a budget of about $55 for a family of 4. Whenever you want to cook on a budget, it will probably require a little bit more time and cooking from scratch, which I personally love. It's so satisfying to cook things from their natural form. Like cooking dried beans from scratch is really satisfying, and you can get so many more beans for a lot less money. So the night before I wanted to cook these, I soaked them in some cold water in a large bowl, made sure they had tons of water to soak in, and they could sit for 4 to 8 hours. So also my beans have been soaking for about 8 hours. They are huge and plumpy. So I think I'm gonna cook 1 in the Instant Pot and 1 on the stovetop just to get them done at the same time. And I will have most of my meal prep done and out of the way. So after my beans had soaked for quite a while, I drained and rinsed them. And then I decided to cook my chickpeas in this massive pot. It's my hosting pot whenever we're serving a bunch of people. I just covered them with a lot of water and added some salt to add a little bit of flavor. So I'm gonna bring this to a boil and cook these maybe for about 25-30 minutes with the lid on. It'll probably take it a while to come to a boil. So we will keep checking on these because I haven't made beans in this pot and I don't want them to burn on the bottom, so just kind of experimenting, but we'll get them cooked. Now let's put these in the pressure cooker. Again, I just drained and rinsed my black beans and then stuck them into my pressure cooker. As you can see, these are a green kernel black bean. I find it really hard to find what I would call normal black beans here. So again, I'm kind of experimenting. After I've soaked my beans, I like to cook them with some salt just so that the insides have a little bit of flavor. Then set your pressure cooker to seal, and I cooked these for about 15 minutes. I thought I was recording. I tried to release the pressure of my Instant Pot and black bean juice came out everywhere. So we're gonna try it covered. This could be very dangerous. Oh gosh. So this just happened. I literally didn't know what to do. I finally was able to stop it. Oh, these green black beans. All right, let's clean up. Well, thankfully, even though that was a disaster, these are perfectly cooked. Although they just don't taste the same. They don't have a ton of flavor. So I'm excited for all of you in the States or in wherever you can buy like traditional black beans, that you will have better tasting beans, but we are eating these all week. All right, this took quite a while, mainly because I had to bring this huge pot to a boil, but these are finally how I would like them because I plan to, some of them I'm gonna cook even longer in a curry, and then I don't mind if they have a little texture and aren't too mushy just because I like that better. So this took about 35-40 minutes even after soaking. So I'll probably be making a lot of bread this week. For my first batch of bread, I'm gonna make English muffins, which will be great for breakfast with peanut butter if we need to switch up from the pancakes, or what I'm thinking is that it'll be great for lunches with some chickpea salad that I'm gonna make with the beans that are soaking. So let me show you how to make really easy vegan English muffins. Start by pouring some warm milk all over your counter. No, but really put some milk and a little bit of water and coconut oil into a bowl. You want it to be a little bit warm, like bath water, so I just pop this in the microwave for about 30 seconds and check on it. And then while that's warming up, I'm going to add some flour, yeast, and salt into my mixing bowl. I just used some yeast I already had in my freezer, and that's why I have put the budget to $55, even though I spent less than that at the grocery store. I just knew I would be using some things I already had on hand, which is a great thing to do when you're on a budget. Then you're just gonna pour the warm milk, water, coconut oil mixture into your flour, stir until it's combined. I usually add in the liquid in parts just to make sure that I don't get a too wet or too sticky of a dough. Once your dough comes together, you're going to cover this and let it sit overnight for about 12 to 18 hours. In the morning, your dough will have risen a little bit. It doesn't get crazy puffy, at least this vegan version didn't, but it still turned into beautiful English muffins. I just dumped it onto a lightly floured surface, covered it, and let it rest for about 10 minutes before I rolled it out into about 1 inch, half an inch, probably about 1 inch thick rectangle. And then I don't have a biscuit cutter, so I just used a glass jar. And I found that in order to get the jar to go down over the dough, it needed a little bit of air to come out. So I don't know if that makes sense. It kind of needs to burp. Otherwise, you won't be able to press it down. There's too much pressure. So I just used my glass to cut the dough into rounds, put all the scraps together, and did it again until I had all of my English muffins. I even made a little baby one. And then you're just gonna stick this onto a baking sheet, cover it again, and let these English muffins sit and rise again for about 45 minutes to an hour. Then you're gonna put them onto a hot skillet. I like to cover them and they will get puffy. And once they've cooked for about 5-6 minutes and are a little bit browned on the bottom, you are going to flip them over, cook them again for about 3-4 minutes on the other side, and they are done. You'll just continue this process until all of your English muffins have cooked and you have a nice batch of fresh bread. Now that my 3 items have been meal prepped, let's jump into breakfast. So for breakfast this week, we ate the same thing. We had plenty of flour and applesauce, so I made some applesauce pancakes. You're just gonna put some flour, baking powder, applesauce, cinnamon if you want to add that, salt if you want to add that, and soy milk into a bowl. Mix it until well combined. The recipe I followed did not have enough milk in the recipe, so I kind of had to improvise. But I just added milk until it got to the right consistency, or the pancake batter consistency that I like. Then I just plopped some batter onto my hot skillet and cooked up these pancakes, and did this a couple times throughout the week to keep us well fed first thing in the morning. To go along with these pancakes, at least for the first couple days, I just cooked up some of the Granny Smith apples in a little bit of oil, added some cinnamon, which I already had on hand, and just cooked those apples until they were nice and soft, and my kids loved them. So breakfast this week are applesauce pancakes with some cinnamon apples on top and lots of peanut butter to fill everybody up. And then when the apples run out, we will just not add those. Now let's jump into the main lunch recipe for the week. So I made some chickpea fake tuna salad with a lot of the chickpeas that I had already cooked, some mayo, lots of salt, and some lemon juice. Ideally, you would add in some chopped fresh vegetables like celery. I guess I did have some onion on hand, so I finally chopped a little bit of my onion. I needed it for some other recipes, but I wanted to add some kind of crunch to this salad. So I just eyeballed the amount of mayo that I needed since I had a ton for the week, seasoned it well with salt and pepper, and it was ready to go. The other way I used mayo in this week, which if you don't like mayo, I'm sorry, you could probably find a cashew mayo substitute that you might enjoy better, but I made a coleslaw. Coleslaw is one of my daughter's favorite ways to eat vegetables. She loves mayo, she loves crunchy vegetables, she doesn't like them cooked, so I thought a coleslaw would pair well with so many dishes this week. So I mixed some mayo, lemon juice, I added a little bit of sugar from my pantry, salt and pepper, and then white vinegar actually makes this coleslaw so delicious if you have that on hand. And then you're just going to add in some of that cabbage that you can cut and shred, and a shredded carrot as well, and you've got a delicious coleslaw. So for lunch, a lot of the days we had chickpea tuna sandwiches with coleslaw on the side. It was a very well-balanced, delicious lunch. Another lunch that I planned for were some peanut noodles. So I cut up the rest of my cabbage, thinly sliced some of the carrots, and stuck them in my oven with a little bit of oil, salt, and pepper. Normally I would cook them in a wok, but I needed some hands-free time, so I just put them in my oven and roasted them while I whipped up some peanut butter sauce with a little bit of coconut milk, peanut butter, soy sauce, garlic. You could add in some ginger powder if you have that on hand, and some lime juice. Then you're just going to cook up some of that ramen, boil up some edamame, and you have a really delicious Asian-inspired, well-balanced lunch. Last meal, ramen noodles with this peanut butter coconut milk sauce and edamame, which my kids love. So we are going to eat this, and yum. Now jumping into the dinner recipes for this week, I started the first night by making some fresh tortillas. So my kids loved these. They were so easy to make and delicious. They do take a little bit of time because this makes quite a big batch. You're basically going to combine your dry ingredients, mainly just flour and some baking powder and salt, into a large bowl. Add in some applesauce, a little bit of oil, and some water until you get a dough. I usually have to knead the dough for a little while to make sure that all of the flour is incorporated into the dough. And then once the flour is all incorporated, you can just use some slightly floured hands to knead the dough for a few minutes until it's nice and smooth. Then you're going to transfer the dough to a lightly floured surface. I love to use my silicone baking mats. I'll link them down below. And you're going to cut the dough into 16 equal portions. If you want really massive tortillas, you could also just do 8. Flatten them out slightly and then cover them with a towel and let them sit for about 15 minutes. While my dough was resting, I started on some black beans. So as you guys saw earlier, these aren't the most flavorful black beans because I have no idea what kind they are. Let me know if you know what kind they are down in the comments below. But I just sauteed some onion and garlic in some oil and then added in some of the black beans and that burrito taco spice mix. That helped to add a lot of flavor. And then while that was simmering on the stove, I made all 16 tortillas, which ended up taking a little bit longer than I expected. I just took a piece of dough one at a time, rolled it out into a thin tortilla shape, and cooked it on my skillet until golden on each side and kept them warm with a towel. All right, dinner for many nights. Black beans, coleslaw, and tortillas. You can make tacos or eat it separately like my kids will probably do. But this made a ton. And I barely scratched the surface of all the beans and the flour. Whoop, and the coleslaw. Yummy tortillas, huh? And you love coleslaw with the mayo dressing. My kids ate all these components separately, but my husband and I made some nice black bean tacos with coleslaw on top. All right, guys, rainy day in Malaysia, but we've got some delicious homemade tortillas, some seasoned black beans, and my daughter and my favorite coleslaw for some crunch and some veggies. So this is dinner for a few nights, I think. The next dinner recipe is so easy to make and is a great budget meal, especially when mushrooms are on sale. So I am just slicing up a ton of mushrooms that I was able to find at a good price on Kroger, mincing up some garlic, and then to a pot I'm going to fry that garlic in a little bit of oil. If you have sesame oil, use that for sure. It adds a lot of flavor. Then you're going to add in your sliced mushrooms, some salt and pepper, and saute those down until they wilt and shrink and get nice and brothy. While the mushrooms were cooking, I just fried up some of that tofu with a little oil and salt in a skillet. And then my mushrooms were ready by this point. I added in some vegetable broth as well as my coconut cream, which I diluted with a little bit of water. And this was the base of our mushroom ramen. You can let this simmer for a little bit to get more flavorful if you want. And to season my tofu, which I slightly burnt as usual, I just added on some soy sauce, and my family loved that tofu so much. It's so simple, uses just a few ingredients, and is really flavorful. Then once your broth is nice and hot, you can add in the last few packets of ramen that you have, and you are ready to plate. We just served our mushroom ramen with the tofu sliced on top and some sesame seeds that I already had on hand. Another dinner recipe that we made this week was some black bean chili. I cut up an onion, a bunch of garlic, some bell peppers, carrots, and sauteed all of that in some oil in a pot until nice and soft. And then I added in some of that burrito spice mix, or you could follow my recipe that I'll link down below that uses chili powder and cumin and just basic spices that you probably have on hand. Next, I added in my chopped tomatoes and tomato sauce, as well as a ton of those black beans and quite a bit of salt because these black beans were still not super flavorful. And that was the base of our chili. It is as easy as that. And of course, at the end, I added in that can of corn just for some extra veggies and a pop of color. We enjoyed this black bean chili with some more of those fresh tortillas and some extra lime juice on top. For my last dinner recipe, which just to keep in mind, a lot of these dinners we also ate for leftovers for lunch on the days that I didn't have a lunch recipe planned. But this night we made some chickpea curry just with some onion, lots of garlic, some curry powder that I already had on hand in my pantry, so I just deducted that from the total budget cost. Added in some chopped tomatoes, lots of those chickpeas, as well as some coconut milk. The key to making a simple curry like this taste more flavorful is to allow it to simmer for quite a while, just to allow that curry powder to soak into the chickpeas and the tomato broth. And yet again, we served this with some tortillas and some fresh lemon juice. I find fresh citrus on top of curries and chilies and soups so helpful in adding a lot of flavor, so definitely recommend if you're on a budget to top your meals off with some lemon or lime juice. All right, we succeeded in feeding my family of 4 on only $55 for an entire week of food. If you enjoyed this budget video, be sure to check out my last extreme budget challenge where I fed myself for only $15 for an entire week. You can click on that video here, and I'll see you guys very soon.